There is a crayon drawing on my refrigerator that I would not trade for anything in the world. It is a family tree that my son brought home from kindergarten, and where the other children drew sprawling branches of grandparents and cousins and aunts. My son drew exactly 2 figures, a tall woman with brown hair, a small boy beside her, holding her hand. "That's our family, Mommy," he told me, so proud of it, just us. I hung it at his eye level, and some nights I stand in front of it, and I still cannot believe that a picture of only 2 people is the happiest thing I own. To understand how a 2-person family became my greatest victory, I have to take you back 8 months to a ballroom in Washington, to the night a man in a tailored suit picked up a microphone and unmarried my sister in front of 180 guests. It was the cruelest wedding I have ever attended. It was also the kindest thing anyone in my family had ever done for me. And I promise you, by the end of this, you will understand exactly why. My name is Margot Sheffield. I am 32 years old, an emergency room nurse, and a single mother. And if you have ever been the person a family decided to laugh at, if you have ever sat at the far table while everyone you were supposed to belong to celebrated without you, then stay with me, because this story goes somewhere I did not think it could. I grew up in a 4-bedroom colonial in Bethesda, Maryland, and I learned before I was old enough to name it that there were 2 kinds of daughters in the Sheffield house: the princess and the workhorse. My sister Brielle was the princess, 4 years younger, blonde like our mother, with the kind of easy charm that made teachers forget her late assignments and made every room quietly rearrange itself around her. From the moment she could walk, she was our father's little angel and our mother's mirror, the daughter they photographed and framed and pointed to. I was the responsible one, which in our family's private language meant I was the one who did not need anything, because I could carry it all myself. I could give you 100 small examples, but a few of them still live under my skin. When my sister's prom came around, she got a $600 designer gown, blush pink and hand-beaded, the kind that made other girls gasp when she walked into the venue. 2 years earlier, when it was my turn, my mother had looked at me over her reading glasses and said, "Margot, you don't need all that. You're the simple type. It suits you." I wore a dress off the clearance rack, $51. I remember the exact number because I had saved my own babysitting money to buy it, and because I stood in front of the mirror that night, telling myself that simple was a compliment. Our bedrooms told the same story without saying a word. Brielle had the corner room with the little balcony over the garden, white furniture, string lights across the ceiling, like something out of a magazine. My room was at the end of the hall, next to the utility closet, furnished with hand-me-downs from our grandmother's estate. A dresser with a drawer that never fully closed, and a bedspread that had faded to the color of dishwater. When my report card came home with straight A's, my mother would say, "Well, of course," and set it on the counter. When my sister brought home a B, there were celebratory milkshakes. Because Brielle worked so hard, she doesn't test well, we have to encourage her. I did not hate my sister for any of it. How could I? She was a child benefiting from a system she did not build. But late at night, in that room by the utility closet, I used to lie awake and wonder what I had done wrong. What flaw lived inside me that made my own parents look straight through me, as if I were a pane of glass they were checking for smudges. I learned to be useful, because useful was the closest thing to loved that I could reach. I learned to anticipate what the house needed, and to provide it before anyone had to ask. And I did not know then that the very same pattern, the invisible daughter, and the celebrated one, would follow me all the way to a 5-star hotel and a microphone on my sister's wedding day. I met my ex-husband, Brett, when I was 24, in my 2nd year working the emergency room at a hospital in Baltimore. He was a pharmaceutical sales rep, charming and confident, the kind of man who makes you feel like the only person in a crowded room, which is a talent that looks a great deal like love, until you understand it is actually a talent for control. We married a year later. My parents came and then spent most of the reception telling the guests about Brielle's upcoming internship at a marketing firm in the city. "Both my girls are doing well," my mother kept saying, "but Brielle, she's something special." On the one day that was supposed to be about me, my family had already left for somewhere else. I should have recognized it as a warning. Instead, I told myself that at least they had shown up, and I danced my first dance, believing I had finally built something they could not overlook. My marriage came apart faster than I could have believed possible. Brett had a gift for making me small. It began with little corrections, the way I laughed too loud, the way I dressed, the friends of mine he found tiresome, and it ended with me apologizing for things I had not done, and slowly losing track of who I had been before him. By the time I discovered he was sleeping with his regional manager, I was 7 months pregnant, and there was almost nothing of me left to injure. The divorce was final when my son was 14 months old. I was 27, alone, working night shifts while he slept at a daycare that charged by the hour, counting out formula and rent and gas like a woman defusing a bomb every month. My mother's response to the news was a long sigh, and then, "I always worried you didn't know how to keep a man happy. Brielle would never let this happen to her." My father said nothing. My father never said anything, and I had spent so many years mistaking his silence for gentleness that it took me most of my life to understand that silence, when someone is being harmed, is not neutral. It is a vote. My sister texted me exactly once during the worst year of my life. "That sucks, but honestly, you always pick the wrong guys. Maybe try therapy." No offer to help. No question about the baby. No sign that she had noticed I was going under. I told myself I did not need their pity every single night while I heated up instant noodles after a 12-hour shift, with my son asleep in his crib in our cramped one-bedroom apartment. I did not need them to rescue me. I had stopped believing anyone would. I just needed them, one time, to stop treating my pain like a show they had bought tickets to. And then a man named Gabriel Fenwick walked into the picture 2 years before the wedding, and for a while I let myself believe the pattern might finally break. My sister met him at a charity gala, a black tie thing benefiting foster children. He was a children's rights attorney, the kind who takes cases for free for families who cannot afford a lawyer, who spends his weekends in courtrooms fighting for kids nobody else will fight for. Handsome in a quiet way, with kind eyes and the rare habit of actually listening when a person spoke, of holding your gaze a beat longer than small talk requires. The first time I met him was at a dinner at my parents' house. Brielle had been dating him 3 months and wanted to show him off like a new car. He shook my hand, and then he noticed my son hiding behind my legs, and without a beat of hesitation, he crouched all the way down to the boy's level. "Hey, buddy," he said. "I like your dinosaur shirt. Is that a T-Rex?" My son beamed like the sun had come out from behind a building. No one in my family had ever paid him that kind of attention. To them, he was an accessory I had been careless enough to acquire, a piece of evidence of my poor judgment. To this stranger, he was a whole person worth kneeling for. All through dinner, I watched Gabriel watch us, with a lawyer's quiet, patient eye. The way my mother steered every sentence back to Brielle. The way my father laughed at my sister's jokes and let mine fall into silence. The way I stood up automatically to clear the plates while Brielle stayed seated, scrolling her phone, and no one thought it was strange because it had never once been otherwise. Later, while I was loading my car in the dark, Gabriel appeared beside me. "Does your family always treat you like that?" he asked. So quietly, I nearly dropped the diaper bag. "Like what?" I said. "Like you're invisible." I forced a laugh, the automatic one I had built over decades. "That's just how we are. Brielle is the star. I'm the supporting cast." He did not laugh. He just nodded slowly, something unreadable moving behind his eyes, and he said, "You're a good mother. That boy is lucky to have you." Then he went back inside, and I sat in my car in the driveway with my hands on the wheel and could not understand why those 2 ordinary sentences made my eyes sting, or why I replayed them in my head for weeks afterward, like a song I could not shake. I did not know it yet, but Gabriel Fenwick had already seen the thing my whole family had spent 32 years refusing to look at, and a man who sees clearly is a dangerous thing to invite into a house built on not looking. The wedding invitation arrived in a heavy cream envelope with gold calligraphy, so thick and expensive, it felt less like an invitation than a royal summons. The venue was the Kestrel, a 5-star hotel in Washington with a ballroom that had hosted senators and at least one visiting head of state. 180 guests. The budget, I would learn, was around $170,000, paid entirely by my parents. For the sake of comparison, when I got married, my parents contributed exactly $1,500 and complained about the figure for months, at holidays, in front of people, as though I had mugged them on my own wedding day. And the invitation, it turned out, came with conditions. My sister called me 2 weeks before the wedding. "Margot, I need to go over a few things," she said in the brisk tone of a manager addressing a temp. "First, wear something understated. Pastels or neutrals only. I don't want anyone pulling attention away from me." I had been planning to wear a deep green dress I had been saving for, the first thing I had bought for myself in 2 years. "Fine," I said. "I can do that." Second, she paused, and I could hear her choosing the words carefully. "Do you really have to bring your son? He's 5. He'll get fussy and ruin the ceremony." "I don't have anyone to watch him," I said. His father is not in the picture. Fine, she cut in, as if granting an enormous favor. But keep him quiet, and you'll be at a table in the back, so you can take him out fast if he makes a scene. The morning of the wedding, my mother called to reinforce the instructions, in case I had misunderstood being unwanted. Margot, I've spoken with the coordinator. You and the boy are at table 26, near the service entrance. Don't make a fuss about it. This is Brielle's day, and we cannot have any distractions. Distractions. That was the word she chose for my 5-year-old son. I should have heard the whole machine of it right then. The seating and the dress code, and the careful choreography of my humiliation. Each piece clicking into place. But I did not. I only wanted to survive the day and go home. And here is the one thing I need you to carry with you as I go on. Because it is the reason I am telling you any of this at all. If someone in your life keeps assigning you the back table, believe them the very first time they do it. So stay with me, because you need to see what they were actually building behind all that gold calligraphy. The Kestrel ballroom took my breath away when we walked in, soaring ceilings dripping with crystal chandeliers, white roses spilling off every surface, a string quartet playing softly in a corner, the whole thing lit like a scene shot for a magazine. I wore a dove gray cocktail dress I had found on sale, modest and forgettable, exactly what my sister had demanded. My son looked adorable in a little navy vest and khakis, his hair combed flat, gripping my hand as we stepped into all that grandeur. "Mommy, it's so pretty," he whispered, his eyes enormous. "It is, baby," I said. "Let's find our table." Table 26 was exactly where my mother had promised it would be. Tucked in the far corner, half hidden behind a pillar, so close to the kitchen doors that I could hear the catering staff calling out orders over the clatter of trays. The other guests at our table were distant cousins I had met maybe twice in my whole life, who smiled politely and then turned back to each other. Not one member of my immediate family came over to say hello or to greet the little boy in the navy vest, who kept looking around for someone to be glad he had come. I watched my parents make their entrance, my mother in champagne silk, my father in a perfectly tailored suit, and they worked the room like politicians, hugging, laughing, accepting compliments about their beautiful daughter, singular. My sister swept in half an hour later, in a gown that cost more than a year of my rent, radiant, glowing, every inch the princess she had always been allowed to be. Her eyes found me across the room, and she smiled, but it was not a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who has already won and wants you to feel the exact weight of losing. On her way to the head table, she stopped at mine. "Margot, you came," she said, as if I were a bill she had expected to bounce. "Of course I came," I said. "You're my sister." She glanced down at my son. "Just remember what I said about keeping him quiet." Then she was gone, swallowed by a crowd of admirers, and as I sat back down, I caught a notification light up on a phone someone had left carelessly on the next table. 2 words, "Remember the plan." My stomach tightened, and a small cold voice in me said, "Pay attention," but I did what I had always done. I told myself it was nothing. The ceremony was beautiful. My sister cried perfect, delicate tears at exactly the right moments. My parents beamed from the front row. The guests dabbed their eyes with monogrammed handkerchiefs. I sat in the back, with my son on my lap, and tried to feel something other than hollow, and I mostly failed. During the cocktail hour, the photographer gathered the family for portraits, and I started to stand, smoothing down my dress, when my mother appeared with a tight smile. "Just the immediate family for this one, Margot." "I'm her sister," I said. "We're doing a smaller grouping first," she said. "You understand." And I did. I always understood. My son tugged my sleeve and asked why we couldn't be in the picture, and I told him we would take our own pictures later, sweetheart, and I lifted my phone and snapped a photo of just him, his little face turned up, blinking hard against the burning behind my own eyes so he would not see it. Somewhere in there I noticed a young man setting a phone on a little tripod at the edge of the dance floor, angled toward the stage. Gabriel's cousin Colin, I would learn later, live streaming the reception for relatives out in Oregon, who could not make the trip across the country. About 60 of them, watching from 3,000 miles away. I did not think anything of it at the time. I had no idea that ordinary little phone on its ordinary little tripod was about to become the most important witness in my life. The clink of silver against crystal quieted the room, and the master of ceremonies, a polished man in a 3-piece suit, stepped to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, the bride would like to say a few words." Applause rippled through the ballroom as my sister rose, glowing under a dozen spotlights, and took the microphone with the practiced ease of a woman who had rehearsed in a mirror. She thanked everyone for coming. She thanked our incredible parents. "You gave me everything. your love, your belief in me. I am who I am because of you." And my mother pressed a hand to her heart, and my father nodded proudly. And then her tone shifted, just slightly, and she said she wanted to talk about family, about what family really means, about the lessons she had learned from watching everyone in her life. Her eyes swept the room and landed on me, and the warmth drained out of her face like water out of a tub. "Especially my sister," she said. My son perked up beside me. "Mommy, Aunt Brielle is talking about you." "I know, baby," I whispered. "Shh." But something in her smile turned my blood to ice water. It was not affection. It was not gratitude. It was anticipation, the look of a performer who has waited a long time in the wings for her cue. "Margot, could you stand up?" she called out, her amplified voice bouncing off the chandeliers. "I want everyone to see you." 180 faces turned toward our corner table all at once. My legs felt filled with wet cement, but I stood, because 32 years of training does not let you do anything else. "There she is," my sister said, her smile widening. "My big sister, the one who taught me so many valuable lessons about life. See, my sister Margot is a single mother." The words hung in the air, sharp and deliberate, each one placed. A few guests shifted in their seats. She got married young, had a baby, and then, well, things didn't work out. She tilted her head in mock sympathy, a caricature of pity. Her husband left her. Couldn't handle it, I guess, and now she's alone. A ripple of nervous laughter moved through the room. My face went hot, then cold. "My sister is unwanted," she went on, letting the ugly word land and echo. "No man wants her. And honestly, can you blame them? She's got baggage now. A kid, bills, that whole sad little mess." The laughter came bolder this time, and her sorority friends at a nearby table giggled openly into their champagne. I could not move. I could not breathe. And then, from the head table, my mother's voice rang out clear as a bell over the crowd. "She's a used product," and the room broke open. 180 people laughing, my mother laughing, my father with his hand pressed over his mouth, and his shoulders shaking with the effort of holding it in. I looked down at my son. His small face was crumpling, his eyes darting between me and the roaring crowd, trying to understand what was happening. "Mommy," he said, his voice tiny and frightened. "Why is everyone laughing at you?" I could not answer him. My throat had closed completely. And in that moment, the only thing in the entire world I was certain of was that my son was watching, and I would not let his first lesson in what love looks like be that a mother is something a room full of grown adults laughs at. I saw the note cards in my sister's manicured hand, typed, prepared, numbered. This was not an off-the-cuff joke that had gone a little far. It was scripted, and it had been rehearsed, and it was being performed. "But you know what?" she said, riding the wave of the laughter like a surfer. "Margot taught me a valuable lesson. She showed me exactly what not to do with my life. So really, I should thank her." She raised her champagne glass in my direction. "To Margot, my cautionary tale. Some people are just meant to be warnings," she said, "not examples. And my sister here is the best warning I could ever ask for." Actual applause. My son's hand tightened around mine until it shook. "Mommy, I want to go," he whispered, his voice cracking down the middle. "I know, baby," I said. "I know," but my legs would not move. I was pinned there under nearly 200 pairs of eyes and my mother's laughter and my father's careful silence. "Honestly, Mom's right," my sister added, shrugging with theatrical innocence. "Margot is damaged goods. But hey, at least she's here tonight to see how a real success story ends." And that is when a chair scraped back at the head table. Gabriel stood. His jaw was tight and his eyes were fixed, not on his bride, but on my son, on that small shaking body pressed against my side. For one strange, suspended second, I thought he was walking out on his own wedding, that the whole night had finally driven someone besides me to flee. Instead, he walked straight toward the stage, toward the microphone, his polished shoes clicking against the marble in a silence that spread out from him like a cold front rolling across a map. The string quartet stopped mid-phrase. My sister's confident smile flickered and went uncertain. "Gabriel, baby, what are you doing?" she said. He did not answer her. He did not even look at her. He reached the stage in a few long strides and took the microphone out of her hand, not snatching it, not grabbing, just calmly and firmly removing it from her grip, the way you take a dangerous object away from a child who does not understand what she is holding. "I apologize for the interruption," he said, his voice steady and clear, carrying to every corner of the frozen room. "But there is something I need to say." And then he turned and he looked at me. Really looked at me, not through me, not past me, not the way my family had looked at me for 32 years, but directly, deliberately, at me, the way you look at a person you have decided is real. Then he turned back to that crowd. "I have spent 2 years watching how this family treats Margot Sheffield," he said. 2 years of dinners where she is ignored. 2 years of holidays where she is left out and made to feel like a guest in her own family. 2 years of watching her be treated as less than nothing by the very people who are supposed to love her most. My sister grabbed his arm. "Gabriel, stop, you're embarrassing me." He stepped out of her reach without looking at her. "No, Brielle," he said. "You did that yourself tonight, with your own hands." His voice carried across the ballroom, steady as a closing argument delivered to a jury. "I am a children's rights attorney," he said. "I have spent my entire career protecting kids from exactly this, from homes that damage them, from adults who should know better and choose cruelty anyway." He raised one hand and pointed toward our table, toward my son, still pressed against my leg, still trembling. "That little boy is 5 years old. 5. And you just made him sit here and watch a room full of grown adults laugh at his mother. You called her unwanted. You called her damaged goods. And your own mother called her a used product." His voice cracked, just once, under the weight of the fury he was holding on a very short leash. In front of her child, the silence that followed was absolute, a ringing, physical silence. My mother had gone white to the lips. My father was staring down at his plate as though it might open and let him fall through the floor. "I have spent my whole life fighting against exactly this kind of cruelty," Gabriel said, "and I cannot, become part of a family that inflicts it and calls it a joke." He turned to my sister. Her perfect makeup had gone garish under the harsh lights, her carefully constructed face coming apart in real time in front of everyone she had invited to admire it. "Gabriel, please," she whispered, and the microphone caught every trembling word. "You're overreacting. It was just a joke." "A joke," he said, and his laugh was hollow and short. "You planned it. You wrote it down. You rehearsed it. You turned your own sister's pain into the entertainment at your own wedding." He stepped back, opening a wide and visible gap between them on that stage. "I can't marry you, Brielle," he said. "I won't." The gasp from 180 people was a thing you could feel move through the air. And then his eyes found Colin's phone, still recording on its little tripod at the edge of the floor. "And one more thing," he said. "My cousin has been live streaming this reception for family out in Oregon who couldn't be here. So about 60 more people just watched. In real time, exactly what kind of family I almost married into." He set the microphone down on the stage with a soft, final thud. "I'm sorry for the disruption to your evening," he said to the stunned guests. With the strange courtesy of a man who had just detonated his own life. "The bar is still open. Please enjoy." And then he walked off the stage. And here is where I learned the hardest thing this whole night had to teach me, which is that the truth does not protect you on its own. Not right away. Sometimes it costs you first. Because the moment Gabriel was gone, the dam broke, and the rage in that room did not go where you would think it should. My mother was on her feet, champagne silks swirling around her ankles as she stormed toward my corner table, and her face was twisted. Not at my sister, not at herself, but at me. "What did you do?" she hissed, jabbing a manicured finger in my direction. "What did you say to Gabriel behind our backs? You ruined your sister's wedding." "Mom, I didn't," I said. "You've always been jealous of her," she shrieked, loud enough to silence the tentative murmurs starting to ripple through the crowd. "You couldn't stand to see her happy for one single day. You had to poison him against her." My sister had collapsed into her chair at the head table, mascara tracking down her cheeks. And now she stood back up, her $1,000 gown seeming to mock the disaster spreading around her. "Liar," she said, pointing at me. "You've been trying to turn him against me since day one. You couldn't let me have one thing, could you? One perfect day." And I felt it happen, right there in that room, in real time. I watched the story rewrite itself in front of my eyes. The guests who had been laughing at me 2 minutes earlier were now looking at me differently. Not with sympathy, with suspicion. She must have done something. Maybe the sister provoked all of this. Poor Brielle, on her wedding day. In the span of a few minutes, I had gone from the victim to the villain in the minds of nearly 200 witnesses. And I understood, with a sick and perfect clarity, that if I did not stand up and walk out of that room this very moment, this was going to be my legacies in this family forever. The jealous sister who blew up a wedding out of spite. I have wondered 100 times since that night whether staying silent in that moment made me a coward or whether it made me the only sane person in the entire ballroom. I still am not completely sure, but I look down at my son, at his red, blotchy face and his little fists balled up against his chest, at a 5-year-old trying so hard to be brave in a world that had suddenly turned loud and angry and frightening around him. And something in me that had been bent double for 32 years quietly stood up straight for the first time. Because this was not about me anymore. This had stopped being about me. This was about the boy who was watching every second of it and learning, right now, what the world does to his mother and whether she lets it. So I stood. Not dramatically, not defiantly. I just stood, smoothed down my gray dress with both hands, and lifted my son onto my hip. I didn't say anything to Gabriel, I said, and my voice came out calm and clear and did not shake. I didn't need to. He has eyes. He has watched you treat me like garbage for 2 years, and tonight he finally decided he couldn't live with it. My mother's mouth opened and closed like a fish pulled out of water. You're lying, my sister spat. You've always been jealous, Margot, since we were kids. You can't stand that I'm better than you. I did not argue. There was no longer any point. I turned and started walking toward the exit. Behind me, my mother's voice climbed to a shriek. Margot, you come back here and apologize to your sister right now. I did not turn around. My son wrapped his arms around my neck and pressed his wet cheek against mine. Mommy, are we going home? He whispered. Yes, baby. Good, he said and paused. I don't like it here. I know, sweetheart, I said, and I kissed his forehead as the tall doors loomed ahead of us. Neither do I. The walk from table 26 to the ballroom doors was maybe 40 feet. It felt like a quarter mile. I kept my back straight and my steps measured and even, and around me 180 guests sat in stunned silence, watching a piece of live theater they had not paid to see. Gabriel was standing near the doorway. He was not fleeing the scene. He was waiting. When I reached him, he stepped forward just long enough to speak. His voice meant only for me. Margot, I'm sorry, he said. I should have said something years ago. Don't apologize, I said, shifting my son on my hip. You just saved him from watching his mother be humiliated with nobody in the room caring. That is more than anyone in my own family has ever done for me. He reached into his jacket and produced a plain white business card, professional black text. Gabriel Fenwick, attorney at law, family and children's rights. If you ever need anything, he said. Legal help, a reference, anything at all. Pro bono, I mean it. I took the card and tucked it carefully into my purse. Thank you, I said, for him. And I pushed through the ornate doors into the quiet of the hotel corridor, my heels clicking on the marble, and the noise of that ballroom fell away behind us like a tide going out. Mommy, my son said, lifting his head. Are you sad? I thought about it. Really thought about it because he deserved a true answer. No, baby, I said, I'm not sad. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I realized I was not lying to him. How about some pancakes when we get home? I said. His whole face lit up. With chocolate chips? All the chocolate chips you want, I told him, and I meant that too. By the time I had him bathed and fed and tucked into bed with his favorite stuffed dinosaur, my phone had collected 52 missed calls. 35 from my mother, 13 from my sister, 4 from my father. I sat on the edge of my bed, still in my gray dress, still wearing the makeup I had applied so carefully that morning, and I scrolled through the messages one after another. You ruined everything. Call me now. Brielle is hysterical. Gabriel left. This is all your fault. Don't you dare ignore me, Margot Elizabeth Sheffield. I will never forgive you for this. Never. You destroyed my life. Your mother is very upset. You need to call her. Not one of them, in 52 attempts, asked whether I was all right. Not one of them mentioned the little boy who had watched the whole thing. I set the phone's face down on the nightstand, and then I saw one more message come in, from a number I did not expect. My Aunt Ramona, my mother's younger sister, the one relative who had looked so uncomfortable at the reception, who had almost stopped at my table and then thought better of it. Margot, it read. I watched the stream from Colin's phone. Honey, I'm so sorry. I had no idea your mother and your sister were capable of something like that. I am ashamed of my own sister tonight. Please know that you did not do anything wrong. I'm here if you need to talk, anytime, day or night. I read it once, then I read it a second time, and a third. It was the first time in my entire life that anyone in my family had told me, in plain words, that what had been done to me was wrong. Not my fault, not something I had provoked or somehow deserved by existing. Wrong. And the tears I had held back all night finally came, the quiet kind you cry when you are relieved and heartbroken at the same time and cannot tell them apart. Someone had seen me, really seen me, and that single text from my aunt meant more than 32 years of waiting for my own mother to do the same. The screenshots came at 8:45 the next morning. My best friend since nursing school, Farah, had texted at 3 a.m. Don't read anything until you call me, she wrote. Seriously, I have something you need to see. By the time I woke up and got my son settled in front of cartoons, there were 14 images waiting in my messages. A mutual friend's daughter was dating one of my cousins, Farah explained, and she had been added to the family group chat, and she had seen everything and could not stay quiet. Margot, they planned this. I opened the first image. The chat was titled The Family. No Margot. A chat I had been removed from 6 months earlier, quietly, without a word, after I asked, one single time, why I had not been invited to a holiday dinner. The messages were dated 2 weeks before the wedding. My sister. I've been working on my speech. I'm going to call her out in front of everyone, make her finally see what a disappointment she is. My mother. Just don't go too far, sweetie. We don't want to seem cruel. My sister. Mom, she deserves it. She shows up with that kid like she's not ashamed of her life choices. Someone needs to put her in her place. My mother. You're right, honey. She's always been an embarrassment. Just make it funny. People love a good roast. And then my father, my quiet, passive, gentle father, the man who never said a word in 32 years. Just don't mention me in it. I stared at the screen until the words swam and blurred. They had written it together, the three of them, like a committee. My mother had helped compose the exact sentence that called me a used product in front of 180 people, and had asked only that it be funny. My father had known every detail and had said nothing, and had asked only to be left out of the fallout, which I understood now was the truest thing he had ever told me about himself. Farah's final message read, I'm so sorry, but you needed to know. It wasn't spontaneous, Margot. It was coordinated. She was right. I did need to know. Because now I finally understood that there was nothing left to save, and there is a terrible, clean freedom that comes the moment you stop trying to rescue something that was never alive. I sat with those screenshots for a long time. My son had fallen asleep on the couch, worn out from the chaos of the night before, his small chest rising and falling in a peaceful rhythm, and I watched him breathe and felt something settle in me that was cold and clear and final. For 32 years, I had been chasing a thing that did not exist. My mother's approval, my father's attention, my sister's respect. I had bent myself into impossible shapes, trying to earn a love that was never going to arrive, no matter how straight my A's were, no matter how many plates I cleared, no matter how else I made myself at the back table. I had accepted crumbs and called them a meal, and thanked them for it. I had let them cast me as a supporting character in the story of my own life. And for what? So that one day they could plan my public humiliation and give it to themselves as a wedding gift. I opened a blank note on my phone and I typed 2 words. No contact. That was all. No dramatic confrontation. No tearful phone call demanding that they finally understand the depth of what they had done. Just the absence of me, which was, when I really thought about it, the only thing they had ever consistently seemed to want. I would not announce it and hand them a scene they could spin into more evidence of my instabilities. I would simply be gone, quietly and completely and permanently, the way they had always treated me as though I already was. My phone buzzed with another call from my mother. I declined it and blocked the number, then my sister's, blocked, then my father's, blocked, and something I did not have a name for loosened in my chest. Not anger, not grief, relief. We're going to be okay, baby, I whispered to my sleeping son. I promise you. They came to my building 3 days later. I was just getting home from a shift, my son chattering happily about the finger painting he had done at daycare, when I saw them standing on the front steps of my apartment building. My mother in a cashmere coat, my father in his usual golf clothes, both of them looking like people who had taken a wrong turn into the wrong neighborhood and could not wait to leave it. My son's grip tightened on my hand. Mommy, why is Grandma here? I don't know, sweetheart, I said, though I did. Go wait inside with Mrs. Ferraro, okay? My elderly neighbor was already in her doorway, drawn out by the tension in the hall, and she gave me a knowing look and held out her hand to him. Come on, honey, she said warmly. I just baked cookies. Once he was safely inside her apartment, I turned to face my parents. You blocked our numbers, my mother said, her voice trembling with outrage, as if I had committed the crime of the century. After what you did to your sister, you blocked us. After what I did, I repeated slowly. You poisoned Gabrielle against her, she said. You destroyed her wedding. The venue is demanding full payment. The caterers won't refund a dime. Do you have any idea how much money you have cost this family? I laughed. I could not help it. A short, sharp, bitter sound that made my mother physically flinch. I didn't do anything, Mom, I said. Brielle stood up and called me unwanted in front of 180 people. You called me a used product out loud into a microphone. Gabriel made his own decision based on what he watched with his own eyes. It was a joke, my mother said, throwing up her hands. A harmless joke that you blew completely out of proportion. In front of my 5-year-old son, I said, and my voice dropped into something very quiet and very steady, the voice I use in the emergency room when everything is going wrong and someone has to stay calm. He asked me why everyone was laughing at his mommy. And for just a second, something flickered in my mother's eyes that looked almost like guilt. Almost like a human being was in there somewhere. And then it vanished as fast as it had come. Brielle is devastated, she pressed on, softening her tone into what she must have believed sounded like maternal concern. Gabriel won't return her calls. The wedding photos are ruined. She's talking about therapy, Margot. Then therapy might be exactly what she needs, I said. How dare you, my mother said, her face going red. And then I held up one hand, and I did the thing I had never once done in 32 years of being her daughter. I interrupted her. I'm going to say this one time, I said, and then I want you both to leave. She fell silent, genuinely, visibly shocked, because in all our years I had never taken a single word out of her mouth. You planned that speech, I said. I have seen the group chat screenshots. You helped my sister decide exactly what to say. You knew precisely what she was going to do to me, and you encouraged her, and your only note was to make it funny. My mother went pale. My father shifted his weight and suddenly became fascinated by a scuff mark on the hallway tile. My sister is crying, I said. Good. Maybe now she will finally understand what it feels like. I have been crying since I was 12 years old, trying to figure out why my own mother looked at me like a disappointment she was contractually obligated to house. Margot, that is not fair, my mother said. You called me a used product, Mom, I said, in front of my child, in front of 180 people, and now you are standing on my doorstep asking me to be the one who apologizes. The silence stretched between us like a chasm you could fall into. I love you, I said, and I was startled to hear that I meant it, that some stubborn root of it was still alive in me after everything. I have spent my whole life loving you and hoping you would love me back the same way, but I can't do this anymore. I won't raise my son in a family where he learns that cruelty is acceptable as long as it comes from people who share his blood. Please leave now, and my mother's face ran through its entire repertoire in about 3 seconds. Disbelief, then rage, then hurt, then that quick calculating flicker I had learned to recognize before it landed on her oldest and most reliable weapon in the world. Tears, Margot, she said, her voice cracking artfully, right on cue. You are going to regret this. When I am gone someday, you will wish you had been a better daughter to me. A year ago, that line would have worked. 6 months ago, it would have made me apologize on the spot. Even a week ago, I might have hesitated, but that was before I watched her laugh while her own daughter was called worthless, before she added her own knife to a wound that was already deep, before I watched my son's face come apart as his grandmother turned his mother into a punchline. Maybe, I said quietly, or maybe I will look back and know that I protected my child from the exact same damage you did to me. And then the door to my neighbor's apartment opened, and my son peeked out with cookie crumbs on his chin. Mommy, are you coming? Yes, baby, I said, and I smiled at him. A real smile, warm and sure and easy. 1 minute, and my mother lunged toward him, arms outstretched. Ethan, sweetheart, come give Grandma a hug. I stepped between them, not aggressively. Just firmly, the way you plant yourself between a patient and a falling tray. No, I said. The word hung in the hallway like a dropped plate that does not break. He's my grandson, my mother said. And he's my son's, I said, and I am the one who decides who gets access to him. My father finally spoke, his voice gruff with discomfort. Margot, your mother is upset. Let's all just calm down and talk about this. Goodbye, Dad, I said. I took my son's hand and guided him toward our own apartment door, and at the threshold I turned back one last time. My mother was crying, real tears now, or close enough that the difference no longer mattered to me. My father stood helplessly beside her, a man who had spent a lifetime standing helplessly beside her. I'm not doing this to punish you, I told them. I'm doing this because I finally understand that I deserve better than what you gave me. And then I stepped inside and I closed the door and I turned the lock, and that small, ordinary click was the quietest and cleanest sound I had ever heard in my life. The video did what videos do. Within a week, it had traveled the length and breadth of the extended family, cousins and aunts and uncles and second cousins I had never once met, passed hand to hand like evidence in a trial. My Uncle Wendell out in Portland saw the stream and, according to my Aunt Ramona, used a string of words about my mother and my sister that I will not repeat here. And here is the strange justice of it. The very same family gossip network that had once cheerfully carried the story of my failed marriage, my inability to keep a husband, my permanent standing as the family disappointment, was now, for the first time in my life, working entirely in my favor. Your mother tried to call me to help manage the narrative. My Aunt Ramona told me over the phone. I told her the narrative managed itself the moment she opened her mouth in front of 180 witnesses and a camera, Despite everything, I felt a small, unexpected spark of something at that. Not joy, exactly. Just the quiet relief of not having to be the only one holding the truth anymore. My sister lost far more than a fiancé. Gabriel's family sent back the engagement gifts with a short, devastating letter from their attorney. Something about irreconcilable value differences, professional courtesy wrapped around a total rejection. His mother, Adele Fenwick, a retired family court judge who had spent an entire career recognizing family dysfunction on site from the bench, called my mother directly and said, and I am quoting my aunt here, "I did not raise my son to marry into a family of bullies, and you should be ashamed of yourselves." My sister's carefully worded public statement, posted 2 weeks later, 6 paragraphs that never once actually apologized, and instead blamed a misunderstanding and outside parties with their own agendas, only poured gasoline on the whole thing. People had seen the video. They had heard the words come out of her mouth. There is no amount of spin that beats the thing an entire room watched happen with their own eyes. Her comment section became a battlefield, and she was not winning it. Rachel of the nursing world, Farah, sent me screenshots I did not even ask for, and I muted all of it, because I did not need to watch her drown to feel like I could finally breathe. I did not feel triumphant through any of it. I did not feel vindicated, the way you imagine you will. Mostly, I just felt tired. The deep tiredness of someone who has been carrying a heavy thing for so long that setting it down aches almost as much as holding it did. But underneath the tiredness, for the first time, the ground beneath my feet was mine. Gabriel called me 3 weeks after the wedding. I almost did not answer, because the number was not saved and I had grown wary of unfamiliar callers. But something made me pick up. Not properly, he said, when I reminded him that he had already apologized at the hotel. I watched your family treat you like dirt for 2 years, Margot. 2 years. And I told myself it was not my place to say anything, that Brielle would grow out of it, that they were just difficult people. I am a children's rights attorney. I have built my whole career on recognizing toxic family dynamics from across a courtroom, and I stood by and let it happen in my own life, because I was in love with someone who did not deserve that love. That night, when I saw your son's face, when I saw that little boy watching his mother be destroyed for other people's entertainment, I could not stay silent for one more second. You did not just stay silent, I said. You ended your own wedding. It was the right thing to do, he said. The only thing. And then, after a pause, I meant what I said about legal help. If your family ever tries to harass you, if you ever have any trouble with custody, anything at all, I am there. No charge. No strings. Why? I asked him. Because your son deserves to have someone in his corner, he said, and so do you. And I found there were tears standing in my eyes again, but for once they were not the sad kind. 6 months went by, and it is a strange and wonderful thing to witness. How quickly a life rebuilds itself once you remove the people who kept quietly knocking it down. I was promoted to senior charge nurse in the emergency department. My supervisor called me into her office on an ordinary Tuesday and told me that my patient satisfaction scores were the highest on the entire unit, that I was calm under pressure and compassionate, and exactly the kind of leader they needed to be running the floor. I cried in the staff bathroom afterward, the happy kind of crying, the kind that ambushes you when you are just starting to believe that you might actually be worth something after all. My son started kindergarten in the fall and made friends fast, a chatty little boy named Jasper and a quiet girl named Naya, who shared his complete devotion to dinosaurs. His teacher sent home a note after the first month. He is a joy to have in class, she wrote. Kind, curious, always willing to help the other children. My apartment was still small, 1 bedroom, and a kitchenette and radiators that clanked all night, but it was ours. And I covered the walls with his artwork, crayon dinosaurs and finger-painted rainbows, and a wobbly portrait of me labeled Mommy in purple marker. It looked for the first time like a home. I started therapy once a week, 50 minutes at a time, slowly unpacking 32 years of being told in 1,000 small ways that I was not enough. My therapist, a soft-spoken woman named Dr. Salazar with steady, kind eyes, helped me put a word to the thing I had never had language for. You were the scapegoat in a family system that needed someone to carry the blame so the rest of them would not have to look at themselves. She told me in one of our early sessions, your worth was never actually up for debate, Margot. It was just never theirs to measure in the first place. And I started, very carefully and a little at a time, to let people in. A pediatric nurse named Jonah asked me for coffee and then for dinner, and the simple, revolutionary idea that someone might want to know the real me, the whole me, and not a smaller, quieter, more convenient version felt like standing in the sun after a long winter indoors. For the first time in my entire life, I was not waiting for anyone's permission to be happy. I just was. The attempts to reach me came in waves after all of that. First, a birthday card for my son, arriving 2 weeks late with no return address, though I recognized my mother's handwriting immediately. Inside was a $100 bill and a note. To our grandson, we miss you. I put the money into his college savings account and I recycled the card. Then a text from an unknown number, my sister using a friend's phone to get around the block. Margot, we need to talk. I've been doing a lot of thinking. Please call me. I did not call. A few weeks later, a voicemail from my mother, pitched in that particular register of wounded victimhood she had spent decades perfecting. Margot, this has gone on long enough. Family is family. You cannot just cut us out forever. I am your mother. Don't I deserve a chance to explain myself? I deleted it before it finished playing. The hardest one, by far, came from my father. He showed up at my workplace, something he had never once done in the 8 years I had been a nurse there. I found him waiting in the lobby, looking uncomfortable and utterly out of place among the worried families and the beeping equipment and the sliding doors. 5 minutes, he said when I walked up to him. Please. We stepped outside together into a gray afternoon. Your mother is struggling, he said. She cries every day. Your sister won't come out of her room. Thanksgiving this year was empty. I waited, saying nothing. I know what happened wasn't right, he said finally, and the admission seemed to cost him something enormous, something he had spent his whole life avoiding paying. But your mother loves you, Margot, in her own way. She just doesn't know how to do it any other way than the way she did it. Dad, I said gently, but without giving a single inch of ground. I spent 32 years waiting for Mom to love me in a way that didn't hurt. I can't wait anymore, and I will not teach my son to sit around waiting for it either. He nodded slowly, and something crumbled quietly behind his eyes, some wall he had held up for a lifetime. I understand, he said very quietly. And for the first time in my entire life, looking at him standing there in the gray light, I actually believed that he did. And that brings me back to where I want to leave you, because this is the part that matters most. It has been 8 months now since that wedding. Tomorrow is my son's 6th birthday. There is a homemade chocolate cake in my refrigerator with far too much frosting, exactly the way he likes it, and a second-hand bike waiting in my neighbor's storage unit downstairs with a bow I had to tie 3 separate times to get it right. My Aunt Ramona drives down from Annapolis every other month to take him to the Science Museum and to load my freezer with containers of homemade soup, and not once has she ever pressured me to give my mother another chance. Family is who shows up, she told me one afternoon over coffee in my cramped little kitchen. Not who happens to share your last name. She was right. Gabriel Fenwick sent my son a dinosaur encyclopedia for his birthday. No note attached, no strings, just a gift from a man who remembered a scared little boy at a terrible party and wanted to make him smile. Small kindnesses. They add up. They come to mean far more than 180 laughing guests ever could. My mother still tells anyone who will hold still long enough that I am difficult and cold and unforgiving. She has rewritten the story so thoroughly and so many times that some of the relatives now genuinely believe the wedding was somehow my fault, that I provoked my sister into it, that Gabriel was always unstable, that the whole thing got blown out of proportion by a bitter woman. I don't correct any of them. The people who actually matter already know the truth, and the people who believe her version were never going to be in my corner anyway. My father sent me a text a few weeks ago. Just 3 words. I'm sorry. No explanation, no excuses, no request to reconcile or come back. I read it, and I sat with it for a long time in the quiet of my apartment, and then I set the phone face down and went about my day. Maybe I will answer it someday. Maybe I won't. Healing is not a straight line, and forgiveness is not a bill that comes due on anyone's schedule but my own. And all of it, every last piece of it, brings me back to that drawing on my refrigerator. The family tree with only 2 figures on it. I used to think a family that small was proof of my failure. Hard evidence that I was a woman who could not hold anything or anyone together for long. I know better now, because that little boy drew the truest picture of love I have ever seen in my life. And he drew it without a shred of fear or shame, and he drew it holding my hand. So here is what all of it taught me, and I am not offering it to you as advice, only as the plain truth of one woman who spent 32 years sitting at the back table hoping to be invited forward. Family is not the people who share your name. It is the people who show up when the room goes quiet. And the boundaries you are so terrified to set, the ones you have been told are cold and selfish and cruel, were never walls at all. They are doors. And for the first time in my whole life, I am the one standing on the inside, holding the handle, deciding who comes in. My son was watching through every second of it. He watched me be laughed at, and then he watched me stand up, and then he watched me build a small, warm, unshakable home where no one will ever be allowed to laugh at him the way they laughed at me. That, and not the family name I was born into, is the only legacy I care about leaving behind. If you are still sitting at somebody's back table tonight, still making yourself smaller and quieter in the hope that one day they will finally turn and see your worth, I need you to hear the one thing that took me 3 full decades to learn. They will not see it. And that is not because you are not worthy of it. It is because they cannot. And their blindness was never yours to fix. So stand up. Take the small hand in yours, if there is a small hand to take, and walk toward the door with your back straight. And if this story reached something real and aching in you tonight, carry it to the one person you know who is still waiting quietly at the back of some room for a love that is never going to come, and tell them what my son's crayon drawing taught me. 2 people who choose each other and show up for each other are already a whole and complete family.